Hello and welcome to the Car Nerd Talks, where today we're going to be talking about a very interesting Italian-American company called De Tomaso, which you've probably heard of. They created the very famous Pantera when they were under contract and actually owned primarily by Ford. But today we're going to talk about one of their other cars, the Mangusta, and the guy who created this company was Alejandro de Tomaso. Alejandro de Tomaso is an interesting character from Argentina who fled to Italy after an attempt to overthrow the Argentinian president of the time. So enjoy today. It should be a good one where we talk about some very interesting characters along with a very interesting car. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching. De Tomaso is an interesting company, and it goes back to the roots of the founder Alejandro. After fleeing Argentina in 1955, he landed in Italy and married an American heiress by the name of Elizabeth Haskell, who later changed her name to Isabella to sound more Italian. This allowed him some investment money to work on some of his passions, including racing driving. In 1956, he joined the Maserati Formula One team. He was in 4 championships, I believe, not winning a single one or scoring a single point for that matter, so this didn't go very well for him. However, he was very, very passionate and very good at making cars and designing cars. So he went on to work on his own company called the De Tomaso Company in 1959, which was founded in Modena. So he began this company by working on aluminium chassis. So these were aluminium backbone chassis, which the company would later become incredibly famous for. So that was in 1959 when they started. And he would later have much success and much failure with this company, selling 84% of the company to Ford in 1971 before buying back the 84% in 1974, and he also bought Maserati in 1975 before they went bankrupt. So this guy actually saved Maserati as well. So a very interesting figure. Now in the early 60s. De Tomaso entered into an agreement with Carroll Shelby, of all things, and basically the idea was him to build one of his aluminium backbone chassis and fit a 7-litre V8 engine that they were working on to a motor for Carroll Shelby to enter into Can-Am races. Now apparently his team and Tomaso's team had a lot of different ideas about the design and about the way the car should work, and this whole thing fell apart, and apparently Alejandro and Carroll Shelby didn't quite get on well because of this falling over. So De Tomaso went back to the drawing board and started working on a brand new car, whereas Carroll Shelby started working with Ford on the GT40, which Ken Miles would race at the Le Mans in '65, using Ken Miles as the racing driver. And if you haven't seen Ford versus Ferrari, it's definitely one to check out. Alejandro, on the other hand, started working on his new car, the Mangusta, which would be unveiled in 1966 and go on sale in 1967. Mangusta is the Italian for mongoose, and mongoose is a cobra-eating animal. And some say the reason for the name is because of the issues with Shelby, and it was basically a name to say that this car would eat the Shelby Cobra alive. As always, when it comes to an Italian car, looks are of the mass importance, and this was no exception. So De Tomaso didn't want to design this car in-house. He outsourced it to Ghia, primarily to a designer called Giorgetto Giugiaro. And if you don't know who that is, Giugiaro is the guy who designed the Ferrari 250 GTO before that, and also the Aston Martin DB4. He would go on to design a rake of cars for a ton of designers, including Lamborghini, including BMW, Seat, of all people, just a ton of them. And in the same year, in '67, that this car went on sale, Alejandro also bought the firm Ghia who designed the car. So that was an interesting one as well. So basically after this, the car was unveiled in 1966 in the Turin Auto Show, and it was stunning. So the car had a beautiful front end. It kind of looked like if a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, a BMW M1, and I don't know, a Mustang or a Challenger all got together and had some sort of strange orgy. That's what this car would be. It looks incredible. So it kind of has that kind of swooping wedge shape at the front that doesn't completely go into a wedge with the 4 headlamps. And I think it looks way, way, way prettier than the Pantera, which is after it. The Pantera to me looks like if someone basically made a kit car of a Lamborghini, whereas this looks like someone had the original specs to a Lamborghini but wanted it to be an American muscle car. It looks fantastic. As you move around the back, it had that split rear window, which was a very popular design choice at the time and in the 50s as well. A lot of old Mercedes, for example, had it. And like the Mercedes 300 SL, which also had a split rear window, this car had gull-wing doors. But just to show you how the company was more focused on performance and form over function, the gull-wing doors were not for the passengers. The gull-wing doors were to open up the engine and luggage compartment at the back, and they look really, really slick. It also had dual tipped exhaust on both sides of the back, so 4 exhaust tips, which came way out, which was a very Italian thing to do at the time. And interestingly, because of a law that allowed this car to be imported into the States at the time, and it was an exemption for low production runs, which this exceeded at one point, and that waiver also was taken away. Some of these cars, around 50 models, had pop-up headlamps. The reason for this was that the 4 headlamps on the car were too low to meet safety standards in the States, along with not having seat belts. So pop-up headlamps were retrofitted to around 50 of these, which is an interesting little tidbit. In terms of engine choices, this car was pretty interesting as well. As I noted later on in '71, Ford would take an 84% stake in the company, and the reason that Ford even had known about this company or was aware of it massively was because of the relationship in terms of engines. So these cars, including the Pantera, which would succeed it, all used Ford V8 blocks, and this one was no exception. It used a 4.7 litre 426 cubic inch Ford V8 engine, producing 306 brake horsepower. This was fed through a ZF transaxle to the rear wheels and gave the thing a lot of oomph. This was quite a fast car, and in fact I think it was more powerful than the Pantera, which followed on from it, which was also a cheaper car. This was a cheap car, but we'll get into that later on. So the car had a lot of functional things that you wouldn't find on other cars for years to come. For example, this car had all-round disc brakes, independent suspension on all 4 wheels, rack and pinion steering, and that all-important air conditioning, which was a big thing in the States, but for European cars wasn't really a thing. The only car in the entire run of this that didn't have a Ford engine was one car that was built to a custom spec for a client, which had a Chevrolet engine. And the reason it had a Chevrolet engine is it was ordered by Bill Mitchell, who was vice president of General Motors at the time. In terms of performance, this car was also impressive in a straight line. It was able to top out at 155 miles an hour, which was confirmed by a car journalist, and it would do 0 to 60 in 4.9 seconds. Now these figures don't sound like a lot today, but in 1967 this was an incredibly fast car. A lot of other things would only hit about 120, and 4.9 seconds was a quick 0 to 60 time. This was brought down by the aluminium chassis, the light body, and the fact that it was strapped with an enormous American V8. On top of that, there was a slight issue though. This was great in a straight line, which made it perfect for the American market, but in Italy and in Europe, where it sold around 150 units of the 400 sold completely, it didn't handle great. The reason for this is because of the big heavy engine in the back and the light aluminium chassis. It had a 32 to 68 front to rear weight distribution, which made it very, very unstable and handled poorly in the corners. So my final one word on this is that this, I think, is the most beautiful De Tomasi product of the era. I think way prettier than the Pantera, and just an incredibly interesting car, especially the name with that whole thing about Shelby and the Cobra makes it just an interesting one to look at. They produced 401 of these, one of them obviously being the one with the Chevrolet engine for Bill Mitchell, over the course of its 4-year history. And then in 1971, Ford bought the company and started working on the Pantera instead, which they thought would be a better use for the market. But this was a mid-engined, rear-wheel drive car, produced with an American engine and designed in Italy. This was a fantastic combination, and it was much cheaper than anything Lamborghini or Ferrari was producing at the time. This, when you look at it, is essentially the original CI Corvette. So you could say the Pantera is, but this kind of harks back to the original. So that is the De Tomasi Pantera. Thank you so much for joining me today. Don't forget to like and subscribe and check out the channel, because every day pretty much, apart from some Mondays and sometimes when I'm hungover, there aren't videos, but most days there are. So as Doug DeMuro say, this has been a good day. Thank you so much for watching. Tune in tomorrow.